And hello to anyone who is joining us after the fact. Let us start with prayer as always. And today I chose a prayer written by Bishop Dion Johnson, the Episcopal Bishop of Missouri. I've shared some of his prayers before, and I just find them really poignant and on point. So let us pray. Oh God, you turn the darkness into light and the day into night. You order the seasons in their turning and direct the planets in their courses. So order and direct us in our doing, that we may put aside the distrust and division that bind us in fetters of despair and chains of desolation. Turn our hearts to the wisdom of our common humanity, bound together in a single thread of destiny, all for your love's sake. Amen.
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 Those last four lines are so relevant.
Oh boy, oh boy. Amen, sister. Okay, well, Donna's not been with us for a while, and Fred has been away for a couple weeks. So I thought we could use some art. This is the same art I shared last week, just to kind of bring everybody up to speed. These are just meant to be visual cues to remind us of where we are in the narrative. So, someone want to say anything about what's going on?
That's trying to encapsulate the last season of As the World Turns.
Oh.
Well, and then, yeah. All of a sudden, Isaac has 12 kids. Jacob has 12 kids. Isaac's left in the dust someplace.
And so, what's the deal with these two ladies here?
Sisters
Well, they're
walked out.
Supply
Yeah.
water.
Donna knows.
um they're they're going to figure in a contest for the love of Jacob, and the father plays a trick on Jacob, and he wants Rachel, but right, he wants
Yep.
Rachel,
Mhm.
but he
Yeah.
ends up with Leah first and has to wait another 7 years. And I guess these are Bible years, because it seems to me with all this waiting, they'd all be pretty long in the tooth.
Yep.
Some of us.
Oh, how we've missed you, Donna. Oh, oh, I love it. I love the Bible years. So, and we were talking last week about, trying to figure out which one of these sisters was which. And, we've got one who's a little bit more full.
Muscular.
Yeah, muscular. And then we've got one who's a little bit more coy. They're holding hands. The story doesn't have them appearing to Jacob at the same time, but, artistic license, right? And then this one has the sisters, almost as twins. They're putting their heads in the same direction and again holding hands. What's the father's name? Does anyone remember? Oh, there's a clue
Lahab.
in the screen.
Laban.
Yay, you all get a gold star. I'm so proud of you. Yay. Excellent. And then this one we liked because many of us said, oh, okay, so this looks more realistic. So what's the story with the sisters and this child here is a visual clue. Fred, is Evan Smith Louise?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. I just let Evan Smith in. I assume so. Yay, there she is. Hey,
Hello,
Louise.
Louise.
It's a good thing you're so tolerant.
Well, I had a vague memory. That's what it was. Um, We're just catching up on where we were at the end of last week, Louise. So what's the deal with the sisters here and the child and this woman over here? Does anyone have a recap they can share?
Was that the maid's child?
Could
Yeah,
be.
I was wondering if that was one of the maids.
Yeah,
Mhm.
could be. And which sister had all the children and which sister didn't at this point?
Leah had all the children.
Leah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And John loves her name. What does her name mean?
I forget.
Well,
Told me.
well, I'm not even sure. I don't even
Burden?
mean
No.
what does it mean, but she's always referred to as the unloved one. And
Oh,
John
the
said
unloved. Yeah.
Oh,
last week, why would anyone name their child Leah? A good question. It's a beautiful name, but if you know the biblical story, it's just so sad. So Leah was the unloved one, and so God compensated her by opening her womb and giving her all of these children. She, between her and her handmaids, Jacob had 10 children, and then Rachel, the deeply loved one, at this point has no children until who is born? Who's her first child? Joseph.
Joseph.
Yes, good.
mm.
And
And
oh,
this
go.
is
Benjamin.
if you remember The Handmaid's Tale,
Mm-hmm.
they bring the same trick to bear, that some kind of weirdness about bearing, but somehow the Rachel's body is close to the handmaid, so it's like it's coming out from
Yes,
between her legs, but very bizarre. But they do the same riff on it in The Handmaid's Tale.
beautiful. Excellent. Someone's been doing her homework, I'll tell you what. And also being an English teacher doesn't hurt. All right. Um, excellent. And then I thought it would be helpful to locate ourselves geographically, remembering that Jacob's story starts out down here in Beersheba, and then Jacob tricks his twin brother Esau and later his father Isaac. And his mother, the original stage mother, Rebecca, says, "You better get out of here. You know, this might not end well for you." And of course, he's her favorite son. Um, and so she arranges for, she manipulates Isaac to say, "Yes, you should go up to Haran to find a wife from among your own people, not one of these Canaanite wives." And so we've been up here in Haran for quite some time. And we eventually today, we will see Jacob start making his way back down here to Gilead. Um, and one commentary I was looking at said that his whole journey was about 550 miles all told. So yeah, on foot or whatever. So that's significant. We don't always pay attention to that. At least I'll speak for myself. I don't always factor that in, just how long these distances are. All right. So that's just my little review. And Elin, am I right that we're picking up here at verse 25?
Oh boy. Yes.
Okay, because Joseph had just been born,
Mm.
and may the Lord add to me another son, and that's what Joseph's name is. He
Wonder
adds.
where all the girls are.
Yeah,
not worth counting.
So we have two paragraphs left in this chapter, and it's probably wise to read them together. Would someone like to finish up chapter 30 for us?
Sure.
Thanks, Fred.
We're starting at 25.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Through the end.
And it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my own place and to my country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me go, for you know my service which I have done for you." And Laban said to him, "Please stay, if I have found favor in your eyes, for I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me for your sake." Then he said, "Name your wages, and I will give it." So Jacob said to him, You know that how I have served you, and how your livestock has been with me. For what you had before I came was little, and it has increased to a great amount. The Lord has blessed you since my coming, and now when I shall provide for my own house? So he said, What shall I give you? And Jacob said, You shall not give me anything if you will do this thing for me. I will again feed and keep your flocks. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from there all the speckled and spotted sheep, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and these shall be my wages. So my righteousness will answer for me in time to come, when the subject of my wages comes before you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and brown among the lambs will be considered stolen if it is with me. And Laban said, Oh, that it were according to your word. So he removed that day the male goats that were speckled and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had some white in it, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and gave them into the hands of his sons. Then he put 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Now Jacob took for himself rods of green poplar, and of the almond and chestnut trees, peeled white strips in them, and exposed the white which was in the rods. And the rods which he had peeled he set before the flocks in the gutters of the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, so that they should conceive when they came to drink. So the flocks conceived before the rods, and the flocks brought forth streaks speckled and spotted. Then Jacob separated the lambs, and made the flocks face toward the streaked, and all the brown of the flock of Laban. And he put his own flocks by themselves, and did not put them with Laban's flocks. And it came to pass that whenever the stronger livestock conceived, that Jacob placed the rods before the eyes of the livestock in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. But when the flocks were feeble, he did not put them in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man became exceedingly prosperous, and had large flocks, female and male servants, and camels and donkeys.
Thank you.
Yeah, but
Well, at least the females finally got top billing somewhere.
Right.
They
Okay.
even came above the camels and the donkeys.
Hey, there
Wow.
you go. All right. What do you think about this strange transaction here?
must have taken a long time because they conceived the next generation before he left. But he was tricky.
That's a really good point, Elin, about the length of time. And it feels like that's been a topic for us today. And I think that's between time and distance that we just don't always pay attention to. So that's great that, Jacob doesn't leave immediately. He waits for this plot to bear out first.
Mm.
And Jacob is, in fact, tricky. So is Laban. They kind of deserve each other. And remember, what is Laban's relationship to Jacob?
Father-in-law.
Father-in-law.
Father-in-law, and what else?
Uncle.
Uncle. He's Rebecca's brother. So, with family like this,
No wonder Jacob turned out this way.
seriously. So, back to Ellie's comment about as the world turns, absolutely. Don't ever tell me that the Bible is staid and boring, because, this really is a soap opera. All right. So, let's just make sure we all get the plot here. So, what's going on?
Well, Jacob wants to go home,
Jacob wants to go home.
and he wants, his wages. And instead of, a cash payout, he kind of accepts, he proposes that he will get, some part of the flock that he's been keeping for Laban based on the coat or the speckling or, whatever other strange thing is going on.
Actually, it's very crafty because he's forestalling Mendel by several millennia.
Yes.
But he's also he's asking for the imperfect animals, which means that Laban will be saying, "Fine, because it's only the perfect ones that you can sacrifice that have really any value. So I'll take all your leftovers." And the fact that there are 8 times as many leftovers just because of genetics, um, any of the imperfect ones, that uh, Laban doesn't seem to have gotten to that.
The imperfect ones are still good eating.
Well, they are, but there's more,
Worth.
more worth, more importance to having perfect animals
Mhm.
than all these blotched ones.
I don't know. I mean, he seems to be, selectively breeding for strength and size too.
Mhm.
Mhm.
One wonders what is in the rods of poplar, almond, plain, and that makes them produce more lambs.
I
That's
think,
superstition, isn't it?
yeah, I think it's the idea that if the ewes see something that's speckled, they'll give birth to a speckled offspring, which is just silly, but
Mhm.
I mean, they didn't know about genetics, so
I
Who
was
Well,
knows? We-
I was
like
looking.
if you,
Oh, go
oh,
ahead,
go
Fred.
ahead.
No, no, no. You go ahead.
No, I mean, it's like they say, if you were startled by a cat while you were pregnant, you might be afraid of cats, or your child would be afraid of cats.
Mhm.
mhm.
Yes.
And the idea of the cleft palate people, they were called hair lips, and
Mhm.
at one time they believed that the pregnant mother saw a hair and then her child would end up with that
Mm.
kind of mouth.
I
Oh,
never
sure.
knew that was the origin of that. Fascinating.
Mm.
Well, when Donna, when you said that it was just silly, I was looking at one commentary, and the writer said, there's a term in Hebrew for this, baloney, and I just again,
Sophisticated.
exactly. It's easy for us with our 21st century sensibilities and, all of this and what we know about genetics, to laugh at it. But, just the fact that Jacob is scheming even now, to get more of the imperfect lambs and goats. It's just like, okay, when someone shows you who they are, believe them, because here he goes again. And
I
don't you
think
love,
that
oh, go ahead.
that's a very relevant subject today, I think.
Yeah, yeah, you think?
Mm.
Uh, um, and then don't you
I,
love in verse 33
okay.
when Jacob says, "So my honesty will answer for me later." Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Kim, you go ahead.
Oh, I just I don't know if this was brought up because I had to check something for a minute, but the piece about the fresh rods made of poplar and the peeled white streaks. And I didn't get the significance of why there's so much detail in that piece.
Mm.
Is there meaning to that?
Well, what
Not
we
a
were
question,
saying
no.
is that if the you saw the color of the rod, it's sort of like a totem. Um,
Uh-huh.
somehow that would impact the color of the lambs or goats being just
Huh.
which is okay.
Okay.
Uh,
No wonder I'm not following.
exactly. Well, I will tell you, when I was prepping this, I had to read this about 4 times before I actually understood what was going on because I thought, what am I missing here? And then I
Yeah.
realized, no, it's what it says that this is what he's
Okay.
trying to do. So
Okay.
yeah, you're not the only one, Kim.
Okay.
I was just looking for a cross reference in my Good News Bible, and they've got a beautiful picture of thousands of goats and sheep following Jacob
Jacob.
out of the camp.
So boy, oh boy, he knows how to work it. You just have got to give him credit for this. Um,
Well, he kind of got slickered by Laban
he sure
in the
did.
beginning. I mean, Laban got, an extra 7 years out of him.
Mhm.
Yep.
So he may have felt like he was just getting his own back.
And again, even now, when Laban brokers this deal with Jacob, he secretly takes away all the spotted and striped animals, and takes them at a great distance so that nobody can. Joey, you've seen a squirrel before. Sorry, everybody. It's like every week he just has to find a squirrel. So, Laban is still slickering him here. So, it's again this back and forth. It's like this what do you call it? Sparring. Back and forth. Who can be more crafty? And
And God doesn't seem to care.
hmm.
I mean, we have the God of Job who masterminds every little detail of what's going on and rewards, the honest and the upright. And you've got this God who says, he's watching like he's watching his kids, try and cheat each other at playing Monopoly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's certainly this understanding of God, right?
Yep.
So yeah. Um, and so Genesis, of course, being the story of origins, right? Um, it's very interesting that this gets recorded as part of the ancestry and the origin story. Um, and stay tuned because does anyone remember or know off the top of your head, Jacob experiences a name change later in the story. And what does he become?
Not Seth. No.
Seth. Nope. All right. I'm not going to tell you. We'll just wait and we'll get there when we get there then. Because then you'll say, um, and you just see how this whole thing plays out.
I
Oh, go ahead.
just one comment before we leave this. I just think this is so rich in relatability because sibling rivalry is, that's just a byword of our society. And I love it when Rebecca, she hates those Canaanite daughter-in-laws. And I mean, this is just so true to life. How many women I know my age can't get along with the daughter-in-law. They aren't Canaanites, but what the heck?
They might as well be.
They might as well be, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so richly human, isn't it?
Mhm.
And that again, that's what I find so much fun and honestly hopeful because if God is using these very flawed people, then there is actually hope for me. Um, did anyone want to look at any of the Hebrew words? Because there were in Fred's translation, then there were a couple that were different. And so I was wondering if anyone wanted to look at that. One that struck me was at verse 27. Laban says to Jacob, if you'll allow me to say so, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of
Yeah.
you. Fred, I think yours was experience in verse 27.
27, for I've learned by experience, the
Yeah.
Lord has blessed me. Yeah.
All right. So very different interpretations. Let's see what the Hebrew says. I have divined. Let's see. Come on. Come on.
I mean, Laban is sort of regarding Jacob as his lucky token.
Yeah, exactly. Um, all right. I just want to see a pop-up window blocked. Okay. All right.
Doesn't want to tell you.
Doesn't want to tell me. All right. Sorry about that. Does anybody have any other translation at verse 27? If you've got a different Bible.
Doesn't say anything.
My note in my study Bible just says that divination was a practice condemned in other threads in the Hebrew Bible.
Oh, that makes
Um,
sense.
so, what that actually looked like, I've learned by divination. I don't know. And so that's why I'm frustrated that I can't open the Hebrew. Um, let me see. Normally, the pop-ups aren't an issue. All right, let me try one more time. Nope. Okay, I'm gonna have to go back and change my settings. Um,
So-
oh, wait a minute, something happened. Wait a minute. Ah, here we go. Nakash, to practice divination, to divine, to observe signs, to learn by experience, diligently observe, practice fortune telling, take as an omen. So it's interesting, those different translations.
Very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're contradictions.
Yeah, and they're both. See, this is one of the interesting things about Hebrew, because one Hebrew word can compact so many different nuances. So, for you all, what do you think makes most sense? I've learned by divination, or I've learned by experience.
I would think it's just sort of, I've kind of noticed over the last 15 years or so.
Yeah, yeah. You're good to have around. Yeah. All right. Was there anything else that you wondered about? Um, I'm just curious about verse 30, my honesty. Um, is it verse
Honesty.
33? By my honesty, my justice, and Fred's translation was righteousness as well. Of my righteousness, my upstandingness. Um, yeah, it's interesting because if we take that as justice, to Fred's point earlier, Jacob may feel like he does justly deserve this because Laban has um, not been honest with him and has been tricking him just as much as Jacob's been tricking Laban.
Yeah, there's kind of an oxbow
Hmm.
incident feel about some of this.
Hmm.
You
Can you
know,
say more about
if you
that?
find them, uh, uh,
Did Fred freeze?
no,
Yeah.
no, I'm
Oh,
looking at
oh, sorry.
verse 33. So my righteousness will answer for me in the time to come when the subject of my wages comes before you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and brown among the lambs will be considered stolen if it is with me.
Hmm.
You know, he doesn't want to get strung up for being a rustler.
Mm-hmm.
So he's defining the terms well in advance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then Laban is removing the speckled animals
Mm-hmm.
and moving them away
Yeah.
so that, oh, because he's doing his own little sneaky thing, because if you take the speckled animals out, they won't breed. So if I guess he's leaving Jacob with the unblemished flocks, um, figuring that they will breed unblemished. But that
They really
it's
have
it's
time on their hands, don't they?
They didn't have the internet.
Exactly.
but anyway, they're both doing sharp dealing.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, you ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Would someone like to read? This is a big chunk, 1 through 21, because it really all kind of hangs together.
Okay.
Thank you, Ellie.
All right. Let's see. Yeah, thanks, because it's a little small for me. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's. He has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him as favorably as he did before. Surprise. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your ancestors and to your kindred, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me as favorably as he did before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I've served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the speckled shall be your wages, then all this flock was born speckled. And if he said, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock were born
Sorry.
striped.
Yeah, I can't get rid of it.
Then all the flocks gave birth to speckled young. And if he said, the streaked ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked young. So God has taken away your livestock of your father and given them to me. During the mating of the flock, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw that the male goats that leaped upon the flock were striped, speckled, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. And I said, here I am. And he said, look up and see that all the goats that leap on the flock are striped, speckled, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and return to the land of your birth. Then Rachel and Leah answered him, is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he's been using up the money given for us. All the property that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, do whatever God has said to you. So Jacob arose and set his children and his wives on camels, and he drove away all his livestock, all the property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Paddan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Now Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. And Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean, in that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. So he fled with all that he had. Starting out, he crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Let's just look at it again. So he's been up here. They've been up here in Haran, Paddan Aram, and they're making their way down to Gilead here. All right. What strikes you?
The daughters are not trusting the father any more than what Jacob is trusting him.
I actually like that.
Mm.
That God sanctions the trickery.
Mm. Yeah, what do you make of that?
I have no idea.
More like people rewriting the story for their own, in their own interest than anything that was divinely inspired from where I see it.
Yeah, he is revising the story a little bit in verses 7, 8, and 9, because it was Jacob himself who was wangling it, arranging it so that these flocks would be born speckled and spotted and whatever. Mm-hmm. So, and he's attributing that favor to God instead.
Excellent. God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. Yeah. Do you notice that the first paragraph and the second paragraph are sort of duplicates? In the first one, it just says, the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your ancestors. And in the second paragraph, Jacob is recounting, the angel of God said to me in a dream, blah, 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 blah. And this may be one of those places. Remember that there are different strains of tradition that get woven together in the text. And so when you have that duplication, that could very well be that there are different traditions telling the same piece of the story.
Mhm.
I also had a piece of art to share. I don't know how this bears on our interpretation, but I just thought that this was interesting. Looking at the wives, you've got one looking at him, the other one looking away. What do you imagine? So the wives don't trust their father any more than Jacob does. But what do you imagine they're feeling at this point?
Well, fear, I guess. I mean,
Where
you
am I
would
going to
think they
get the
would be.
best deal?
What, Fred?
Where am I going to get the best deal?
Um, I'm thinking they think that our father squandered our dowries, and that really makes me mad. And I want a place of my own. Time to move out of the family house.
Well, the dowry was traditionally, isn't that what's given to the groom?
Yes, but I don't know. I probably can't find it, but something in here made me think that that
Jacob had to pay
Yeah,
Laban.
Yeah,
Jacob
he's the
paid
one
Laban.
doing the 7 years of labor
Yeah.
for the
Yeah,
what,
that would be the bride price.
For each one.
Mhm.
and then
So
didn't he squander it? Doesn't it say that father squandered it?
that's what
Yeah,
I
it does
heard.
say that.
Yeah, he's used up all that was paid for us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if Laban had any sons, they would expect to inherit.
Yeah, and in verse 30, the first verse refers to the
Laban's
sons of
sons were
Laban.
all sitting around being mad. They're the ones who were being screwed out of an inheritance because the daughters were part of Jacob's household.
But even though the sons may inherit, I think it was the custom that those girls had a dowry attached to them, and it was their right to have that paid to their husband, which would go into their household.
And it's interesting because the text says in verse 14, Rachel and Leah answered him, is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us. And essentially, he does sell them. And so I love that moment because the wives are speaking up for themselves. They have voice here and they have a little bit of agency because they're saying, okay, yeah, forget dad. We're hitching our wagon to you. And we're going to start over, as someone said.
Well, they've probably seen throughout the years that he's been honest where they've seen their dad, do the old switcheroo and stuff. You know what I mean? So they have more reason to trust Jacob just from their experiences.
I don't know, before we move on to this, and this is something that, I tried to catch up with you guys yesterday, and
you did a great job.
well,
You're on top of it, Donna.
well, one thing that I noticed is that the Lord speaks to these people and they say, "Here I am."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very significant because they listen
Mm-hmm.
and they're not like um, Adam and who hides
Ah,
from the
lovely.
Lord.
Lovely. Excellent.
And that's something that we could take away as a piece of wisdom in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear the call, listen.
Mm-hmm. And there's something powerful about listening and then responding, here I am. It's like present and accounted for, right?
Isn't
It's
that a hymn?
here I am, Lord. Yeah.
Lord, yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Mm,
Um, and so there's something about, it's almost setting one's heart upon what they're hearing because, yeah, here I am. I'm present. I'm fully here. Um, Beautiful. Absolutely, that wisdom. Um, one thing I noticed, and this is kind of a minor detail, but it's, as we've been going along, a lot of moments when Jacob is about to move, whether it's, his brother is after him or, his dad is upset that he's been swindled, Jacob overhears something. It's never direct discourse when it's with with God, he's hearing directly. But look at verse 31. Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father. So, Jacob likely is saying, uh-oh, here we go again. I've got to get out of town. My brothers-in-law are going to string me up. Um, and Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him as favorably as he did before. Why in the world would he not regard him favorably, right? Um, so, so it's an interesting motif that keeps coming up is that, Jacob doesn't deal directly. He acts in this sort of sinister way, or certainly, if not sinister, certainly tricky way. And then he overhears or he hears through the grapevine or somebody tells him, some servant says, by the way, or whatever. And so this is not the first time we've seen this happen. And I had not noticed that at all before. But I think that's interesting, right? And as Donna says, as opposed to this encounter with God, which is rather direct. Jacob, here I am. So that, we can juxtapose those two modes of relating.
I think that another thing is that Laban obviously has totally trusted Jacob to take care of all the business. And I don't know what he's been doing, but he's been ignoring it, or he
Mhm.
would know that his flock had all these multicolored animals.
Mhm.
And it sounds like the brothers don't know it either, that they're all just putting it on Jacob's shoulders. And
Mhm.
he's making money hand over fist for them.
Yeah, I love that.
Well,
He has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father, but he also created wealth for their father. Yeah.
Mm.
Fred, what were you going to
well,
say?
I was going to say, if he first Laban is saying, stay, I'll give you, what wages do you want? I have profited from having you around.
Hmm.
And then Jacob starts sucking all the profit into his own coffers.
Yep, he
As
sure
for
did.
overhearing things, I think it'd be very tough to keep secrets and, when you're living in close quarters in tents. It doesn't take much if you're just walking by the tent, even innocently, to hear what the people are saying inside.
Mm.
Absolutely. But it's just interesting that the narration keeps bringing this up because, if you think about it, just in terms, again, this juxtaposition that Jake, it's always hearsay, it's always rumor, it's always, listening at the tent flap, as opposed to, this direct conversation with God. That's just very interesting to me. Anything else that strikes you? Um, what about Rachel stealing the household gods? We haven't talked about that.
that's the first time that household gods have been mentioned.
Yeah.
What exactly are they?
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like a monotheistic religion that they're following.
Well, no, it wouldn't be.
Mm.
So these are idols, and remembering that there are different idols, different gods for different outcomes. Um, remember last time we read about the mandrakes, those weren't gods, but the same idea that that was, an aphrodisiac, it was somehow connected with fertility. So some of the gods would be fertility gods, they would be gods of abundance and prosperity. So you would worship a particular god to get a particular outcome. That vending machine god that we talk about. And so Rachel steals her father's gods. You
And that's
gotta
going
love
to cut
Rachel.
him off from them?
What's that?
Is that going to cut him off from them?
I would, that would
Is
make
that
sense.
like stealing the blessing?
Kind of. Yeah, that's interesting that you put it that way, Fred. Yeah, it's in that way it's kind of parallel to Jacob stealing Esau's blessing, isn't it? So maybe Jacob and Rachel deserve each other. They're similar. I hadn't thought about that at all. That's great. Um,
Don't see it that way.
um, no, Elin, what do you see?
I just see that she's taking protection for herself and her sister and her children.
That could be too.
Mm,
They certainly aren't inheriting anything from Laban, as they
mm,
say.
So she's got to get something.
Except all the spotted sheep and goats.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Of which there are many.
Mm,
Um, yeah, again, I love that moment because as we've talked about throughout, the women, well, certainly, Jacob has one daughter that we've heard about so far, Dinah, and as we go forward, she's not going to have a great outcome either. Um, but but Rachel and Leah have been just pawns in this game between Laban and Jacob, and so for Rachel to again have some agency and say, okay, I can't do much, but I can steal dad's household gods. And it may be twofold. It may be I'm going to get back at dad by taking his gods, because I'm mad at him. And to Elon's point, they will give us some protection as we're traveling down to Gilead. So both of those things could be true at the same time. And Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean in that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. So, probably in the dark of night, off they go. He fled with all that he had. Starting out, he crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. And again, that's quite a lengthy journey as they're making their way south.
And you'd think with all that livestock that um, you can't make them run.
You can't get very far without
It's a very long process.
Be tough
Exactly.
to flee quietly or fast.
Yeah. How did they go without anybody noticing all of those livestock?
He must have doped the others.
But it's interesting too, because someone was saying, I'm sorry, I apologize, I can't remember who said it, but that Laban put Jacob in charge, and Laban and his sons didn't really pay attention to all that was going on. Once again, they're kind of asleep at the switch because, Jacob takes off and they don't notice. So it's like, what is up with you? Wake up. All right. Would someone like to read these? This is a big chunk. So why don't we break it up? Would someone like to read verses 22 to 32?
I can read it.
Tim?
On the third, excuse me, on the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he took his kinsfolk with him and pursued him for 7 days until he caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said to him, "Take heed that you say not a word to Jacob, either good or bad." Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsfolk camped in the hill country of Gilead. Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You have deceived me and carried away my daughters like captives of the sword. Why did you flee secretly and deceive me and not tell me? I would have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre. And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? What you have done is foolish. It is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night. Take heed that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad. Even though you had to go because you longed greatly for your father's house, why did you steal my goods?" Jacob answered Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. But anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of your kinsfolk, point out what I have that is yours and take it." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods.
You should.
Thank you. The plot
That got a little tricky at the end.
Wow.
the plot thickens.
Well, I love how Laban turns to Jacob and says, "And God told me not to say anything to you, but I am here I
Exactly
am
as he's saying all this to
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that. That was my reaction as well.
Yeah.
Like, ah, he can't help himself. Um, and here we have that refrain again. What have you done? What have you done? Just like Pharaoh and Abimelech with Abraham, here we have what have you done? You have, set me up. Again, this is a trope that we're seeing over and over again. Any questions or things you notice that you wonder about?
Well,
Strange it takes 7 days to catch up on him. He must be walking.
Mm-hmm. But Jacob had 3 days lead time.
Mm.
Donna, you were going to say something.
well, one thing that I didn't understand was, Laban says that he would have made a big party, like a going away party for them, and had a proper leave taking with his grandchildren and so forth. And so I'm wondering why Jacob didn't take that route, because they made a deal.
He didn't
But
trust Laban.
yeah, maybe that's it.
My study Bible says that the party and the mirth and all of that seems unlikely, given that Laban
Exactly.
not wanted him to leave before.
He's just trying to make him feel guilty or like he made a mistake, but that's probably not the reality.
Okay.
Laban quite possibly might not have let him leave because basically Jacob is making money for Laban.
Not anymore.
Well, he's
making
cheating
money
him.
for himself.
He's cheating him, but he was saying earlier that
Yeah.
it's because you've been around and it's been nice to have you.
Well,
Got
Laban
lots of
may well have
grandchildren.
wanted
Of
to
course,
read
it's
this
been
book.
nice to have him. He works like a dog for Laban.
Yeah.
Mm.
I don't trust any of these people.
As well, you shouldn't. Absolutely. I wouldn't either. It's interesting when Laban says, "And why did you steal my gods?" And Jacob says, "Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live." He said before that if Laban found any of the unblemished sheep or goats in Jacob's flock that he shall be considered a thief. And so it's the same idea. So Jacob does have a little bit of pride and integrity. He's like, I'm not going to steal what's not mine, although he kind of does. And to be fair, Jacob doesn't know that Rachel has stolen them. So it's a fascinating story. Why don't we just do these last two paragraphs to finish this section, and then we'll quit. Would someone like to read from 33 to the end?
I'll give it a try.
Thank you. Can you see it all right?
Yes.
Okay.
So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two maids, but he did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about in the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, "Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me." That's funny. So he searched, but did not find the household gods. Then Jacob became angry and upbraided Laban. Jacob said to Laban, "What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Although you have felt about through all my goods, what have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsfolk and your kinsfolk, so that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. That which was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. Of my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. It was like this with me. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night."
Thank you. That's quite a monologue he's got. What do you think?
He sounds so sincere.
Doesn't he?
I think it's true. All of that. And now he's away from him. He's not vulnerable to him because he has the loyalty of the daughters. So he can call him out on it.
I think Rachel's dodge on this is pure genius.
What you think?
Yeah, I mean, but it is about the way of women with me, meaning that she's menstruating or whatever. I mean, and we all know,
Pregnant or
boy, the
this.
men stay away from that.
Exactly.
I'm not going to look there. If you're doing that, just sit there and leave me alone.
Sounds like some junior high girl trying to get out of class.
Exactly.
You know that in the Jewish religion, in the strictest part, you cannot touch a menstruating woman. A man cannot. Because when I met, Adam has this is not typical of his American family, but he has an uncle in Israel who is Hasidic, and he's very, very Jewish. And when he met me, he couldn't make eye contact with me or anything. Not because I wasn't menstruating at the time, but just in the off chance, in the 25% chance of your life that you are at that age or whatever, they cannot.
Well, why take the risk?
Why take the risk? They will be defiled and it'll be horrible if they touch you. So, so she's really setting a perimeter around herself.
Oh, that's a lovely
by doing that.
Yeah. Again, she's got agency. She is taking control of her situation. You know, we don't hear anything from Leah, but Rachel's the one doing this.
Yep.
I have a note in my Bible. It's about the possession of the household gods.
Uh-huh.
It says, according to ancient custom, it ensured the man's leadership of his family and his claim on the property.
Ah,
Hmm.
So that was a pretty
Oh.
powerful move.
Yeah.
very much so. Excellent. So, in a sense, Rachel accomplished the two things that we were speculating about, both taking away Laban's power and giving it to Jacob. Oh, thank you for that, Louise. That was great. It was very helpful. I want to look up, I know we got to quit, but I wanted to look up verse 42, this idea of the fear of Isaac. The footnote here just says meaning of Hebrew uncertain. They always say that when they can't figure it out. But let me, what verse did I say that was?
42.
42.
42.
The fear of Isaac. Let's see what this is. The dread, the terror. Okay. Pakad.
I would certainly imagine that Isaac had experienced fear and dread at various points.
I have a note in my book. It says the fear of Isaac, perhaps kinsman of Isaac, is an old epithet for the God of the, hold on one second, fathers, appropriated as a title for Israel's God.
Hmm.
I'm using the New Oxford Annotated Bible.
Excellent.
But I would think that as I say that Isaac, the fear of Isaac, I mean, exactly the reason Isaac was terrified was because God had told Isaac's father to kill him.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, the fear of Isaac, I mean, you're talking about, if you weren't afraid of that, if you had sent me away with nothing, my father would come around and extract payment from you. I mean, Isaac is a powerful person.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird construction, isn't it? If the God is my father, and of course Jacob's father is Isaac. So if the God of Isaac, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, it's very interesting. I'm not sure what that is.
It's just sort of a triple threat here. I mean,
Yeah.
he's referring to these three gods, and this is a God. This is a really big God, and he's on my side. So, if it hadn't been for him, you would have gypped me. So, woe was me.
And because God's on my side,
Mhm.
you're toast.
Yeah.
Well, and it's, the fear of Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
He's bringing some temporal leverage to bear there too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So exactly, Isaac, what is the relationship between Isaac and Laban again?
Brothers-in-law.
Brothers-in-law. So, they're each leading their own clan, but they are related.
Mm-hmm. I know. And we have to remind ourselves that there is this connection, that they are related, because
They don't act like it.
Laban does not treat Jacob like a nephew at all. Well, good work, gang. Should we stop here?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
All right. Thank you. And
Thank you, Patty.
thank you.
Thank you,
Oh,
Patty.
Donna,
Thank you,
it's so
everybody.
good to have you
Thank
Nice
you.
to see you,
back.
Donna.
And we will pick up here at verse 43 next week. Elin, can I just grab you for 1 second?
Yeah. Yes, sure.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
all.
Bye.